Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Curious podcast, where I am joined by the most phenomenal human I know, my sports brain, my sports guru, my favorite brother, Scott. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the episode.
Another phenomenal introduction. I need you to walk around with me at all times and just introduce me to
I'll be your
people.
hype woman.
I think
I'll be your hype woman. I'm here.
I don't
Like,
know. I
can I
don't know
get a
if I can
shirt with
afford it.
your?
Yeah,
Can I get a shirt with your face on it and be like,
absolutely.
okay? Or I can be like a boxing match where I can just walk around with my phone and play you hype music.
That works too.
Okay, I'm on it. These are all things I am qualified to do.
Perfect.
As an extended amount of time of my life as your big sister, basically your entire life, obviously. I'm good at this.
Most
I've
of my
been
life. Yeah,
practicing my whole life for this.
I never appreciate
Things
that.
I have not been practicing for my whole life, calling football plays. So this week's podcast comes from actually one of our favorite listeners. Hi, Jeannie. Jeannie has
Hi,
watched
Jeannie. Thank you for listening.
quarterback. She watched quarterback on Netflix, right? And she was saying
Mhm.
the episode where they talk about play calling is so interesting. And she's like, I learned so much, but she's like, please do a podcast on this and dive into it for me. So Jeannie asked, and she shall receive. The same will apply to those of you who are listening and want to learn a little bit more about something. We have emails, amy@lastnightsgame.com. Send us a note, DM us on social media, because we love to answer these questions, because to me, this is how we learn. This is how we can join that conversation. And I will, for the record, everyone listening, I really know nothing about play calling. So this should be really interesting. These are all my curious questions for the sports guru today. So we really haven't talked much about anything. So this is purely, we're flying by the seat of our pants and we're calling an audible. Well, did
There
that
we
work
go.
okay? Audible on
Yeah.
this topic today. So I guess let's talk a little bit about quarterbacks and play calling. You obviously always see them over there with an iPad. They're looking at plays. Are we still doing X's and O's? Is that a thing? How does the play creation work? I guess let's start from the basics.
At this point, technology is really taken over a lot. Everyone's got iPads. I think maybe the old school guys like Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are drawing up plays on a whiteboard with each other, but everything's basically on an iPad now. In real time, you can see the results. You can see, where everyone's lined up. So it's gotten obviously technologically advanced.
It's so interesting. So I guess one of the things, and I never really thought about this really until I went to an Aussie Rules game in Perth, Australia. Shout out to the Dockers and the Hicks
Mm-hmm.
family for taking us. But I learned so much about this. But they have what they call like as a coach's man. And that guy runs from the sideline out into the play, basically, or in the stoppage and play, and
Mm-hmm.
reports plays. The coach sits up in a box and calls them down, and this guy runs them out, or gal runs them out. In modern day sports, or in US sports, in football especially, the NFL, the teams, certain players can have earpieces. How does that work? How does that compare to college?
So the earpieces you can see on their helmet. It's called the green dot. So
Mm,
on offense, the quarterback has the green dot, and on defense, they also call their plays via a microphone into the earpiece. It's typically your middle linebacker. So if
okay.
you see a green dot on the back of the player's helmet, that's why.
And only one player on each side, offense and
Yes.
defense, can have that green dot? Okay.
Yes. So it's very, very regulated. And to your question, with how it works with college, obviously colleges don't necessarily all have the same budgets, so they do not have the capability to use, the microphone and an earpiece so they rely on a lot on hand signals, and you see a lot of these play charts with like SpongeBob SquarePants, Superman, stuff like that. So they'll hold up those play cards, and everyone on the offense will know where to look while they're on the field.
That's crazy.
So
So if
it's
I hold up a card with a SpongeBob, Mickey Mouse, Paw Patrol, and
Mhm.
I'm channeling my child's career here, and octonauts. They know
Yes.
that that pattern means something, or are they shouting octonauts? Like, what does that mean exactly?
Each player should know it's designated towards what their responsibilities are. There's usually a lot of different cards being held up. Some of them may mean absolutely nothing. You've got everyone's so paranoid on having their plays stolen that they're holding up cards that mean absolutely nothing. So
That's so
it's really a
interesting.
fascinating thing, and that's one of the biggest transitions as a quarterback from college to NFL is actually calling those plays, because a lot of these college quarterbacks like a Tua or a Jalen Hurts, they were in a spread offense, so they never huddled. So a lot of their
Mm.
play calls would just be hand signals or the play card, and they would really never have to call a play.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I just figured that was part of the deal.
No, not necessarily not. So
Huh.
I mean, there are times that they will have to huddle and call a play, but a lot of these times they're looking at the cards or the hand signals from a coach and going in that way. So it's a big transition to go from not calling a play to being in an NFL huddle with 70,000 drunk, angry fans yelling at you in Chicago or something.
Yeah. Shout out to Chicago. But so let's say, okay, I get a play. I guess multiple questions. Let's go back to the earpiece really quickly.
Mhm.
You mentioned something a long time ago that they cut off the communication to that player at a certain time. Why? What does that mean?
So the play comes from either the offensive coordinator or the head coach, whoever is designated to call the play, and it goes straight into the earpiece of the quarterback. So, when you see them doing this, they're trying to hear the play. And the communication cuts off with 15 seconds left on the play clock. So if you don't get the play in before that, you're essentially screwed. But the reasoning behind that is so the coach can't let the quarterback know what the defense is doing. It's
Ah, makes sense.
so if it didn't cut off, the coach could sit there and say, they're blitzing from the safety or something. So it's purely kind of a competitive advantage if they don't cut it off. So
That is so
at
interesting.
at
Okay.
15 seconds, it cuts off.
Huh. I am learning so much.
And if you go
So
15 seconds and don't remember the play, then you're
you
in a lot of
probably had a
trouble.
concussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about the difference between calling an audible and a no huddle. What's the difference between those?
Okay. So an audible would be there's a play call, quarterback gets it from the coach, hears it, relays it to the team, they go to line of scrimmage, they're set up, and the quarterback notices that, maybe this play we have called is going straight into what the defense wants to do. We're running it right and they're blitzing from the right, so it's going to run straight into it. So the quarterback usually has the option to change the play, or there might have been, a variation of this play that can be called, which is an audible. So they'll essentially change the play based on what the defense is showing them pre-snap.
Okay. And then no
Is that
huddle
too
just means
technical?
no, that makes sense, right? We see what's happening and
Uh-huh.
we're changing the call because we're running right into whatever they want us to do. So
Yes.
no
Even with
huddle then
oh,
comes
sorry.
in. No, I was gonna say, so the no huddle comes in to the ear and then they just
So
use
the no
something to
huddle would usually be like, in the last 2 minutes of a game when there's not time to sit there, get in a huddle, and talk about a long play. The quarterback will get it from the coach, and there's usually it'll be the same formation mostly the same time, the entire time they're playing, and they'll either give a hand signal, or if they can tell, usually they'll be able to yell at their lineman and tell them to play. So no huddle, there's really no communication. It's usually hand signals, or quarterback can yell at whoever's closest to him.
I was gonna say, because if you're in a rowdy stands or
Mhm.
I don't really know of any like nice and quiet quarterbacks. I'm imagining you have to kind
No.
of practice that.
Mhm.
But so hand signals aren't going to work because you're in a line, right? We've all sat at a table where we're in a line. You
Mhm.
can't talk to each other. So hand signals aren't necessarily going to work. So I'm hoping to relay it to you, the center, who's going to hopefully relay it down the line in like a telephone game.
Yeah, usually that's kind of what happens with the
Huh.
linemen. And usually
Interesting.
in a no huddle, they'll keep it pretty basic as far as what everyone's doing. Not much will change. But if you watch a guy like Aaron Rodgers, with his new team, it'll be interesting because he's known for just kind of calling plays in like a no huddle with hand signals, and not necessarily everyone knows what everyone else is doing. So he's telling one guy to go one way, that guy over on that side's doing something else, and they don't necessarily know what the other's doing. So,
Interesting. Right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing.
but sometimes that's for the best because then the defense would have absolutely no idea either.
That's true. So how many, and you may not know this specifically, but how many plays, especially as a college quarterback, right? So do I have that arm reference thing when I'm a college quarterback with the
Usually you
plays on it?
can, yes,
But
yes.
how many plays are in there? Is this like my cheat sheet in stats where everything's written this big and there's 4,500 plays in there? Or is it really 20 plays I'm working off of? How many plays are players having to memorize, whether you're a defensive player or an offensive line or whatever that is? What does that look like?
I mean, with coaches, like you see a guy like Andy Reid on the sidelines with his, it looks like a Cheesecake Factory menu with the amount of plays they have, how big it is. So, I mean, there's hundreds of plays that mostly the quarterback has to know all of them. Usually just the position players, they listen for what they're supposed to do. So they kind of just focus on, what's pertinent to them in the play. So they don't have to know as much, but these coaches have a play, they'll have a variation of that play, a variation of that variation. So it's really, these guys are kind of psychotic, to be honest with you.
This is mind blowing to me, by the way.
Mhm,
I just hope you know that. So is there like how do people know that like every time, like if you watch a baseball and
mhm,
every time the guy touches his ear on as the third base coach, that means, Scott, you're supposed to do this. That's the next one is your kind of call.
mhm.
Is there a word? Do typically, if I shout Chick-fil-A, does that mean all my defense, my center has to be paying attention? Like is there a word that they have to listen for?
It can vary based on team. There's no really set, like dead set rule, just because it can change and you don't want the defense to know what you're doing. So it really can just vary. It can vary based on the play calls, but usually in a play call, they're going to say it in order so everyone knows what to listen for. So like the way they say it, it'll be lineman, they'll call protection, formation, and then routes, and then running back. So there's
Wow.
usually a cadence to the way that they say it. That way everyone can hear what they're supposed to do.
Interesting. I'm just so intrigued by this because I think the strategy, like I love watching
Mhm,
football and I've watched you play football and I've always picked your brain, but it's so interesting because this is a whole facet that
mhm.
I don't think we get to see behind the scenes as a fan as much. The XFL, they've released they will do the play calls, right?
Yeah, the XFL was fully transparent on everything, which was really kind of a cool experience to hear the coach. You could hear him call the play, the quarterback have to hear it and then relay it to his team in real time,
And then see how it
which
turned
is
out.
something the NFL would never do. None of the coaches would ever agree to have their information out there like that.
It's interesting. Okay, so talk to me about like I did have a question.
Yes.
Peyton Manning's famous for the word Omaha.
Hmm.
You could always hear Omaha audibly on the broadcast. What was Omaha?
And that did take over the world, and we really still don't necessarily know what it meant because it could be a dummy call. It could have changed the play call. He never has really gone into it, and you do that because you don't want the defense to know what it meant. So it might have meant nothing.
Oh, but his production company is now called Omaha Productions, so there's
Yes,
that.
and I guess he did at one point say it was an indicator word,
Mm.
which kind of backs up what I was saying that it may have really didn't mean much. It could have been a variation of an audible, play clock was running out, the ball needed to be snapped immediately. I mean, there's really endless things that it could have meant.
So he could have essentially got up there and called a play, yelled
Mhm.
Omaha, and that meant ignore the whole first thing I yelled. The second one's what
Yes,
matters.
and go to the second variation, yes.
Oh, well, instead of saying calling an audible, I might have to start, saying I'm calling an Omaha.
There you go. It's right
That
up
would give
Peyton's
some
alley.
Omaha. Maybe he's a really big fan of the College World Series.
Or Omaha
Vegas plays
Steaks. I don't know.
Omaha Steaks. Um, one of my favorite
Possibilities are
humans, David
endless.
Black, lives in Omaha. I love Omaha. Shout
So
out
there
to
we
you
go.
all. Maybe he likes Warren Buffett. I don't know. He never said like why Omaha though.
No, not necessarily.
Okay. I like our hypothesis better. He likes Warren Buffett. He eats Omaha steaks.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll hear now there's so many mics like on the field. You'll start to hear these quarterbacks saying different words, something like that. It won't necessarily be Omaha, but it'll be some kind of word you'll start hearing because they've
So if
allowed
you
a little bit of access.
so if you watch a team consistently, you might hear their equivalent of Omaha, a word that's just
Yes,
continually repeated.
correct.
What would your word be?
That's a good one.
Because it's got to be easy, right? It can't be.
Yeah, you have to
You
be able to
can't.
say it quickly.
I think
I'm
mine
gonna
might
have
be
to get
like
back to you on
taco,
that one.
taco,
Taco. That's perfect.
taco.
And a lot of the words will either start with an L for left or R for right. So
Oh,
that way they'll change the play call going that way. So like Lucy or Ricky or something, and that would indicate the play's going to the left or right.
intriguing. Now, see, if you were really smart, you would use something that was some sort of like Lay's for potato chips, and maybe get a Lay's potato chip sponsorship, or I would
That's
use
next level.
wine. It's based on my shirt. I would use wine.
Franzia,
Franzia. Well, if you left and right, so it would be like Rombauer.
Bombauer.
That's a
There we go.
white wine, Rombauer. Um, that'd be interesting.
Okay, so we're working on
Things.
a
Hey,
wine sponsorship.
quarterbacks, if you're listening, we've got you covered to make a little bit of
Bombauer.
extra money.
There we go.
College quarterbacks, we also have you covered. Name, image, likeness is a thing. Listen up.
As long as they're over 21.
Lays, Ruffles, done.
Boom.
Can you do a play call for me?
This one is very interesting because recently reporters were kind of bugging Tua, who's the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, for a play call. So he gave them one to see if they could repeat it back, kind of like he has to.
Okay.
So do you want to try to repeat this back? It's the play call that he gave the reporters.
I will try, and I don't have this. I don't have it written down. So
Okay.
everyone, transparency. Let's
And
do it.
by the way, the reporters, I think they may have gotten one word right, so it wasn't even close.
Oh, I'm going to
All
screw
right,
this up. So let's just do it.
ready?
Yep.
North, right, clamp, south, fox, H, top, pass, 38, top, Gumby, XP, sweat.
I think I got north, right, clamp, something about sweat, and I think that's about all I have.
So that was pretty good. You got the first few words, actually. So
That's a lot of words to remember the order of.
yes. Yes, and each word is there's an indication on different positions and what they're supposed to do within that play.
Wow.
I mean, they're so paranoid. They could just say like the actual route, but everyone's paranoid that people are going to figure it out. So that's why they code everything like that with different words.
So you're thinking about, you have that 15-second cutoff until you get to the line. I'm sure you're in your head going, I walk in the grocery store, I'm like, bread, peanut butter, milk,
Yes.
yogurt. And I repeat that to myself so I don't forget it. I'm imagining they're walking the line going north, west, right, whatever all the other words were. And that's so interesting. I would be terrible at this job.
It's something you don't really think about, but it's very, very hard. I think even in the quarterback on Netflix, Kirk Cousins, I think he forgot half a play when he said it, but I think they just practiced it so much everyone knew what he was talking about, so they ran it correctly. But they're not perfect.
But this gives me like such an additional appreciation for the strategy behind it, for the quarterback, for the line. I mean, it's an appreciation for the sport itself. Before we log off, is there anything you want to leave us with play calling? Anything else you want to tell us?
I think we covered most of it. It's really just a wild world once you really dive into it.
I'm just going to
So
walk around starting.
listen to the pre-snap mics when you hear the quarterbacks saying
Okay.
random words.
Okay.
Try to figure out what they're talking about.
I'm going to do this now. I used to just listen for Omaha, but now I'm going to, the teams that I watch
Mhm.
on a regular basis, I'm going to listen for that little indicator word. Okay.
There we go.
Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you, Jeannie, for sending in your question, because this was one of the most fascinating episodes of the podcast I've ever done, because I've learned so much.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you for sharing your brain with us, Scott.
Hopefully that made sense.
Of course it did. Thank you.
Thank you.